I haven't left this Alaskan cabin for several days now. I don't even know how long it's been. Is my month up or not? I'd only planned to visit my friend's land here for 4 weeks, just enough time to cash in on my PTO at work. Ideally, I would know when my month is up after my food stores have been exhausted, but there may have been a day or two in there where I didn't eat. I ran out of firewood, so I rely on this 0-degree sleeping bag to keep me warm at night. Could easily go outside to chop wood as I had been doing my first week on this remote 7 acres, as it was my only source of exercise. But I cannot venture outside these double doors any longer. They rock in their hinges every night when the creature returns to knock on them. It hasn't missed a night since that first midnight visit. I don't see its pyramid-shaped head in the rose window anymore. Maybe because it knows I'm watching the glass religiously, even though I'm terrified to see what might be looking back at me. It has a single glowing red eye, and I know it sees everything in the large room that is my cabin, like a laser scanner of my surroundings. It only knocks once or twice before leaving me, perhaps hoping that I will eventually forget what I saw that first night through the window and let it in. I don't know why it bothers to knock, as it is 19 feet tall at the least and could surely knock down those doors like dominoes if it wanted to. Just in case it is still out there in the daylight, awaiting for me to venture outside, I don't dare go out there. I think it knocks because it knows why I'm here, to reunite with my friend I purchased this land with. Our intention was to get a taste of the off-grid life, but I chickened out and he came out here alone to work on various campgrounds, with odd jobs until he was fully prepared to travel out here to our land. I came out here looking for Trevor, as I saw in the satellite images that a cabin had been built here on the land, and in only a few months' time. He never got back to me, and fearing the worst, I flew out here with my modest camping gear for a high price, which is what Trevor should have done in the first place. Part of the reason I didn't come out here with him is because he had talked too extensively about the mythed green doors, which would serve as shortcuts to other parts of the world, or worlds. They were said to be protected by the giants, and I am beginning to think that is true, judging by my midnight visitor. Had Trevor found one of the green doors, and was it protected by this creature, who won't let me sleep at night? I had reviewed the notes he sent me through email, which contained images of these supposed green doors, which were marked with sacred geometry, hexagrams, circles, and squares. Apparently there was a magic to the construction of these geometries on the rock slabs in the forest, involving the equal spacing of 19 circles in a hexagram pattern, and connecting the dots to create a circle and a square with equal areas within a hexagram, supposedly circling the square, said to be impossible by mathematicians and philosophers alike. Why hadn't he just rode a snowmobile out there, as I had originally suggested? Then I would have gone with him, and he wouldn't have gone out here alone to be a target for the tall creatures in these woods that everyone is too smart to even venture into. And I wouldn't be the newest target for it to hone in on with its red eye. No, he never had it in his mind to go the safe route. He wanted to find the green doors, whether they were still protected by the giants or not. I wondered if the doors in his pictures were located somewhere near the mansion-sized cabin by our own private lake. I should have known that Trevor couldn't have built this mansion with the materials he would have packed in. No, it was likely built by the 19-foot-tall thing that knocks but never enters. But why build this cabin, felling all these trees to stack up as protective walls from the wilderness? And why construct the scarecrow at the shore of the lake? And why fashion the scarecrow to be the same size and appearance, with the pyramid-shaped head and cyclops eye? Is this giant trying to attract more of his kind to our lands? Maybe it is knocking on my cabin as a warning that I should get out before more of his kin arrive. With that thought, I fired up my satellite phone, but I was horrified to realize that I would have to leave my sanctuary just to find an open spot in a clearing with no tree cover, so that I could point my phone at a clear section of blue sky. I had a pickup scheduled with the pilot at the lake as soon as the month was up, but would that poor fellow follow through with the plan? I paid up front, so he should arrive, but he was pretty quick to fly off when he first dropped me off, after seeing the 20-foot-tall scarecrow in front of the cabin, as if he had recognized the beast. I counted my freeze-dried packages of food and saw that I had enough for a few days at the most, but I at least wanted to follow up with the guy to make sure he was coming. I could run out to the lake, set the satellite phone down on the ground, and wait for it to connect, while safe inside the cabin. And then I could duck outside to grab the phone and send my SOS message to the pilot. Now at 10 in the morning, I scoped out the backyard and its crop of trees through my single window, but there was nothing alive to see out there, not even a bird in the sky. I could still see the latticework spiderweb, constructed of segmented logs connecting several of the standing trees. So much like a gate those trees resembled, separating my cabin from the deeper heart of the forest. Equipped with my .40 revolver, I unlatched the door with its sliding wooden bar and raced outside, leaving the door open a crack so that I could circle around to the beach and set up the satellite phone on the chopping block. I fired it up and then didn't waste a moment in securing myself in the cabin again. Unfortunately, the window did not face the lake, so I could not see the satellite phone from my vantage point. So I looked out at the spiderweb net through the trees out my window. I was glad that I hadn't seen the orb lights in the trees since one of my first nights in the woods. Then I heard a crackle and spun around to see that my fireplace had been restocked with firewood, and it had just been set alive and catching. I could already feel the heat from my other side of the room and smell the sweet pine fragrance of burning wood. In the 3 minutes I was outside setting up the satellite phone, someone had slipped in through the open door with an armful of wood, deployed them into the fireplace, and gotten the fire started without any evidence of lighter fluid or tissue paper. Had the giant done this? How in the world? The doors weren't big enough for a figure like his to easily pass through, let alone with the materials to start a fire. And for what reason? I didn't waste a moment in barging back outside to check on my satellite phone, and I wasn't even surprised to see that the chopping block was now empty. I looked up at the towering pyramid-headed scarecrow and knew that I was being watched at that moment. I pulled out my weapon and did a quick turn there on the lakeshore, going against my better judgment to threaten the creature to show itself, but nothing responded to my challenges. I heard something large and loud crack in the forest on the other side of the lake, and I retreated into the cabin's heat, but I knew I wasn't alone. On the other side of the cabin, a dark shape was hunched over by the fire, and I was surprised to find how relieved I was to see anyone, as long as they were my size. And then I recognized the head and shoulders and the long hair as it parted with a slight turn of its head my way. This was Trevor, finally returned to his cabin. I bridged the distance between us, but halted in my steps when I noticed that the fireplace's light could be seen through his back and chest. He looked at me through the sides of his eyes, which glinted in the orange firelight, and he grinned through his beard at me. Only his features were sharp in the light, but the rest of his form was smoky and unrealized. When he spoke to me, his voice echoed queerly in the vaulted ceiling above my head, and I wondered if this was the first time someone had spoken within those walls, and without vocal cords either. His voice came riddled with static, meeting me from the end of a very long subway tunnel. "I'm glad you got the email messages. That way you know what to expect when you go out there," Trevor told me. "Unlock the green door from your side, and I'll be there on the other, ready to come through." "What green doors? I don't know where to find them," I argued. "I'm not here with you in person, just in spirit," he said, tilting his head to gaze back into the fire. "I'm on the other side. I went through the green door, but I didn't know they had a ticking clock on them. I went back, but the magic was spent, and I was deserted here on the other side. You need me to open it on my side? I need you to catch your Cyclops friend in that trap I set for him in the woods. That's the most important thing." "Trap? That was you who built that?" He nodded. "It's much easier to build large structures over here on the other side. Those lights you saw, they were me, from the next dimension, a fourth-dimensional space. That's what construction looks like from your perspective down here in the 3D, like flashlights shining. I can pick up whole logs like toothpicks and put them together like toys. No, the giant didn't build this cabin. I did. I also built the scarecrow, but not to scare the thing away, but to attract it. You see, when I opened my green door, I did not heed the warnings from the locals to close it as soon as I did. So, while I went through, I allowed the Cyclops to come through into our world. If I had listened, I wouldn't have opened it in the first place, because I cannot reopen the door from my end. The magic only works on your side. I need you on that end to receive me. We need to send that thing back through if we can." "Because of the scarecrow, the giant is hanging around here, thinking one of his kind is close by?" I asked. "Yes," the Trevor Spectre said. "I made the cabin so that it was as big as a giant, so the Cyclops would believe one of his kind built it. It knocks on your doors every night, thinking it will be reunited with his kin. I've seen hieroglyphics on my side depicting the war of the giants, where most of his ancestors were killed. They seem to be the antagonists, the cannibals, I'm afraid, and they're eaters of humans." "Great. You brought a cannibal to my doorstep," I cut in. "I brought a giant cannibal to the doorstep of your world," Trevor replied. "How am I going to lure it into your trap?" I asked. "It must have seen it by now, and it must know I'm here. It looked me right in the eye through the window." "It doesn't see well in the dark. Lure it into the forest after the sun sets." "Why hasn't it attacked me if it's a people eater? It should have no trouble breaking in here and getting me." "It thinks you might know the whereabouts of the other Cyclops. It knows that you didn't build this cabin, and it doesn't know about me as far as I can tell. No one has opened a green door for millennia, I'm sure, so it believes in its hubris that another Cyclops brother or sister opened it from your end, needing rescue. This one knocking on your cabin door was ready to come through, as if he was hoping to find a lost relative on this side. Maybe there is another one out here in these woods. It must not be too threatened of me, or maybe it is. It stole my satellite phone as soon as I put it out there. No, I took your phone. I'm using it now to communicate with you. I can see you from my fourth dimension and manipulate objects like the firewood and the phone. Whatever I do up here eventually translates down to your world, like starting the fire in the hearth here. He said this as he held up one of his hands, indicating that the phone was right there against his ear, as if he was using the speakerphone to transmit his voice to me. It's a nice anchor object that I can speak through. The electromagnetic spectrum that this phone utilizes can also be accessed in my realm. Where's the giant now? You should be able to see it from where you are, I said. It's in the lake, and it is watching you. But like I said, it can't see great in the dark. It doesn't know what that wooden construction is in the woods. But once it bumps into it, it should snap like a bear trap. I fashioned it with springs and hinges. Time passes much slower up here, and I've had the time to put everything into practice that I've learned about in the 3D, like metalwork and glass blowing. I'd like to return to your dimension if I could, but let's set this right and get this thing back where it belongs. But how am I supposed to do that? I don't know where to find any of the green doors. You know how to open one. I moved one of the boulders close to the lake. You must have seen it. And I shaved down one side so that it's a flat enough surface for a door. I can't finish the door on this side. I will get to work now on carving the circles into the stone, but you have to connect the dots on your 3D level. It all needs to be done within the same stretch of time where the magic will start to die. You'll need to connect the dots and create the hexagram within minutes of me carving the geometry from my side for the connection to be made. Then you can come through to our land? That's the hope, Trevor said with a nod. But for now, let's make sure we kill that thing. And with that, I watched him fade out of view, allowing the phone to drop to the hardwood floor that he purposed. I sat there for some time, with the satellite phone and revolver in my hands, waiting for the sun to set out my window. I wondered if Trevor was still there with me, except in his own dimension, keeping an eye on the giant in the lake, or perhaps sitting there with me by the fire to keep me company. I wondered when I would know when to act. As soon as the sun set, was I to go out there to the lake, start carving into the boulder to get the Cyclops' attention? I broke out my large hunting knife, which I thought would do the job. But would that be enough to coax the monster out of the lake? What if it wanted me to reopen the green door so it could get through? Trevor made it sound like it wanted to be here in the third dimension, perhaps to continue searching for its loved one. But there were too many loose ends and unanswered questions to make me feel confident about this plan at all. I would have switched on the satellite phone a second time to get Trevor's plan B, but it looked like he drained all the battery with the last call between worlds, and I would have to wait. But when the time came and I saw the light dwindling and finally extinguished through the trees, I went back out there into the dusk, squinting to see over the lake. It was noticeably colder by the water, but there was not even a ripple on the mirror surface. I found the boulder that Trevor had indicated, not even 12 yards from the scarecrow, and I saw that a circle about the size of a quarter had already been etched into the rock's slate-like surface. I watched in amazement as a new circle began to materialize a quarter of an inch to the left of the former one. I could be sure that Trevor was there with me, but in spirit, as he'd indicated. I could picture him in my mind's eye, stooped over the rock with a look of concentration, carving into the rock with his knife or whatever chisel he'd crafted up there in the fourth dimension. It looked like he was making quick work of evenly spacing those 19 perfect circles. So I unsheathed my knife so I could be ready, but I quickly realized I should be holding my gun instead. Looking out over the lake, I could see what appeared to be a dark iceberg on the surface of the water, a perfect triangle point that continued to grow in height and dimension as the Cyclops' head lifted. I saw its red eye, unblinking and reflecting the last of the sunlight in the western sky. It saw me, and now that I'd seen it, it continued to step out of the water. I watched the pyramid take full form, followed by its light pull of a neck, its razor-sharp shoulders, and swinging gorilla arms as it strode forward, turning the sequent mirror of the lake into a wake pool. It was black as pitch, and I couldn't make out any distinguishing features on its chest, arms, or legs, as if it was made of shadow or smoke. It rushed toward me, and all I could think to do was run with the gun and knife in each hand. I felt the earth rumbling under my boot heels as I circled around to stand on the other side of the wooden spiderweb trap. I yelled at it from my safe haven in the trees, brandishing my gun and even lining up a shot through the branches to squeeze off in its direction. I don't think I hit it, as large as a target as it was. I watched it lumber into view, bumping its shoulder into the brick chimney on the outside of the cabin and fixing its spotlight eyes on me, and it came after me, silent and smooth in movement, stepping 10 yards with each step and reaching toward me with a 6-fingered hand, as big as the plane I flew in on. Then it stepped into the line of trees, and its pelvis triggered the trap and caused it to close around its middle and chest, pinning its arms to its chest. When the trap closed, it ripped out a few of the standing trees on the ground around me, and I dove back into the clearing as the force began to fall in a domino effect of trees, striking their neighbors. A few more trunks fell and crashed into the thing's head. It did not scream, but it fell on its knees. It was buried in the tumbling logs.
It fell still, with just the tip of its pointed head sticking out of the rubble. Relieved, I rushed back to the stone slab, just in time to watch the last circle as it was completed. I took that as my opportunity to start tracing the lines, from one circle to the next, and once I had the hexagram border traced, I went about drawing the square in the middle of that, and the circle inside the square, copying from my memory the green doors from the pictures Trevor had shared with me through email. Then the earth trembled a second time, but not from anything activated by the green door. That remained cold and dormant. I didn't know what to expect as soon as it was open, but I heard the logs rolling behind the cabin as the giant struggled to free itself, and I looked in time to see its head peeking out over the cabin's roof, one eye fixed on me. And now it was climbing over the cabin, hooking its elbows into the roof so that it could boost itself up and lift its weight up over onto the shelf. And then its long spider legs were bending and digging for purchase as its arms reached across to grip the edge of the roof and pull. The cabin groaned as it attempted to collect itself on the ground again. I didn't know what else to do but to turn and fire, but I quickly gave up on that when it continued to amble toward me. I slapped the boulder and screamed for it to open, begging for Trevor to work his magic on his side, but nothing happened. No visible doors had opened in the air. There were no dimensional rifts or floating portals of light, and I was running, tripping over my own feet and lying sprawled out in the sand as the thing closed the distance in one step. But it stepped over me and measured itself up next to the scarecrow, peering out over the lake. It seemed to crook its head to glance down at the green door at its feet, which did seem to be reflecting some unseen light like a glass surface. In fact, the lake had a strange new texture as well, as if it was the source of its own light, glowing a coppery orange. The trees all had white auras of light that flickered like candle flames, and the grass and rocks all seemed to glimmer with a dewy water. The sky was the most peculiar of all. Although it was twilight, and I should be looking up at a bluish-blackish screen with the beginning of twinkling stars, I looked up at a green sequent dome that radiated its own light like the lake. "Ah, I suppose the door is one way," a dejected voice said next to me. I straightened up in the sand to see Trevor standing next to me, hands on his hips, and as solid as the day I last saw him, before packing up all his things to venture across country on the Alaska highway. "Now we know. I was afraid that might be the case. But at least we were able to confirm that for ourselves. We won't be going home anytime soon, at least not through that door." I returned my attention to the lake to see that more triangular heads were poking out of the water, as 2, 3, and then 4 giants came striding out of the lake, all with those red cyclop eyes. "Sorry that I brought you into this world with me, but it looks like I did so just in time. That's not where we would want to be right now. At least here you won't have to worry about hunger or thirst or cutting firewood," Trevor said. "So there were more of them in our world anyway, hiding and waiting." "Yes, I thought they snuck through the door when I came through, but it looks like they've been in the 3D for a very long time. Maybe they just wanted us to open the green door one last time, so we trap ourselves in here and stop bothering them in their home. It looks like this was their lake first, and I guess they didn't like us squatting here." "I was the squatter after all," I said under my breath. We both watched as the Cyclop giants walked off into the shimmering trees, until only the tops of their bobbing cone heads were visible above the canopy, and then gone. Huh. I'm realizing now that my journals can never be read by any of my family, my friends. I will have just disappeared into the Alaskan wilderness like Trevor, like so many others. And I'll be written off as another hapless hiker way over his head. If you're reading this, then I can't be sure you're in the 3D world I came from. Maybe you're here in this twilight zone with me and Trevor. Maybe we'll meet someday on either ends of an Alaskan lake. Maybe I'll be as solid as you, or a ghost of a shadow of my former self. If you see me, waving a hand, don't be concerned for me. The giants have left this world to Trevor and I. Perhaps we'll build something beautiful for the ones we've left behind. Or maybe we'll just build a wall to keep the monsters out.